Marshall Islands and Tuvalu, Venezuela. Yes, those are the ones that are on that list. But I also want to mention that we have good news in terms of Gabon having recovered their full rights, having paid their outstanding contributions to the budget of the IPU. I say this because last year we did suspend the voting rights of Gabon for not paying their assessed contributions. Now they have been taken off that list and so can exercise their full rights during this assembly. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary General. Dear colleagues, I wish to inform you that the Executive Committee reviewed the situation of some members in arrears falling under Articles 5.3 and 5.2 of the IPU statutes and non-active members. In light of the update provided by the Secretariat, which suggested the worrying magnitude reached in the arrears of 9 member parliaments, having accumulated more than 3 years of non-payment, and in conformity with the recommendations of the external auditors to prevent arrears becoming unmanageable, the Executive Committee decided to recommend the suspension of the membership rights of St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Vanuatu, El Salvador, which is 4 years. Then the last of these had recently confirmed its unwillingness to continue to pay to the IPU budget, that is El Salvador. Nonetheless, the Executive Committee requested the IPU to continue supporting these parliaments despite their suspension. The concrete measures of support to parliaments of small island developing states seats include financial support for participation via Parliamentary Solidarity Fund, PSF, which should not be used to fund the contributions, encouraging participation in IPU bodies, encouraging submission of agenda items, as well as holding informal meetings at assemblies. In the same vein, the Executive Committee encouraged the Secretariat to seek best practices from organizations like the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, CPA, for seeds engagement. The Executive Committee seized this opportunity to express its thanks for members' efforts, namely Australia, whose speaker was here, New Zealand and Fiji, to broaden the IPU's membership, including the Pacific region. Taking into account the update provided by Speaker Dick Milton from Australia, the Executive Committee decided to defer its decision on potential suspension of the membership rights of Marshall Islands and Tuvalu until the 153rd Assembly, which will be held in Arusha, Tanzania. Both of these have accumulated 5 years in arrears and have their voting rights suspended under Article 5.2. The Executive Committee also deferred decisions on the possible suspension of the rights of Guinea and Liberia under Article 5.3 until the 153rd Assembly in Arusha, Tanzania, pending further consultations with these member states. Considering the complex case of the Bolivian Republic of Venezuela, which has accumulated arrears of over 11 years, the Executive Committee decided to revisit the full situation of this country, considering both its political situation and arrears status together, at its next meeting in June 2026 in Geneva. The Executive Committee commended the Secretariat's efforts to keep in contact with non-active member parliaments and support their participation in the IPU activities. Encouraging such initiatives, the Executive Committee pleaded in favor of active members' assistance to keep our global membership more active and dynamic. Colleagues, may I take it that you wish to approve the recommendation of the suspension of St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Vanuatu, as well as El Salvador, and take note of the feedback of the Executive Committee that I've just shared with you?
May I? May I?
Yes, Suriname, 1 minute.
Madam President, I want to ask your special attention for the small island developing states. I have asked that attention continuously. I miss the solidarity with the small states with the huge challenges what we have now. You want us to be active. How can we be active if you suspend us? I miss the solidarity, and in that light, I have raised the issue of the 25, 75, and percent of our funding. Raise that level of 25% to 30%, where 2% goes to the small island developing states, and let us be inclusive for the small states of this earth. We are part of this world. How do you want to exclude us with these material aspects? I raise my voice against this method, Madam President. You can thank me, but I want to have your attention. We are not taking seriously. There is no solidarity with us. Thank you, Madam President.
Colleagues, the report, it's only that we are short of time, so I'll give you a shorter explanation. The report tells you what we are able to do and what we are unable to do. At the same time, this decision to suspend them partly is actually to help them so that the debt doesn't keep accumulating. If we keep them on the lists, they keep accumulating. Like I've read you the report about what we are having with the Bolivian Republic of Venezuela. We have 11 years and they have accumulated so much. So when we are suspending a member, we are not suspending in bad faith, or we are not suspending to, to make them look bad. We are suspending them so that we don't keep counting the debt, so that when it's time for them to come back, they don't have to really carry the burden of the paying the membership fees. But I agree with what you have said, that we have to keep working harder, seeing how best we can keep engaging these countries and trying to see how we can stand in solidarity with them, and we will keep pushing. IPU stands for them also, so not just other countries that are able to do something. Colleagues?
Guyana.
Colleagues, I'm sorry, we are really out of time.
But we need to speak to the issue of the suspension.
Sorry?
Because you have the issue of the suspension of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Lucia on the floor. And I wish to speak to that.
Yes, you are allowed to speak that, but I'm saying I'm running out of time, and I hope, Mr. Speaker from Guyana, you're going to address yourself on the requirements of the rule number 5. Please, you have the floor.
Yes. All I'm saying is we should not suspend them at this time. We should continue to work with them. IPU wants to enhance cooperation with the Caribbean. There are 15 nations and only 3 or 4 are active. If you suspend these 2 important countries, you're doing more harm to your initiative than to them. So I'm saying we should not implement that decision of the executive committee.
Colleagues, there is a proposal that we shouldn't suspend them, but there are 2 things that we have to note. One is the fact that this decision has been deferred for quite some time. But secondly, we have to take into account that the reason we are discussing these countries is because they are unable to pay their subscription fees. Now, if we keep them on the list without suspending them, which is also a good thing, but we have queries from the auditors, both internal and external auditors, requiring us to take a decision because when a country is still reading as a member, it means we are also going to budget for the money that is going to come from subscriptions of these countries. So partly, like I said, it's meant to put a stop to us counting the date from these countries. So it may not look like we are helping them, but in a way, that is the intention also of that rule. And we are also bound by the reports that we have just adopted here, the financial reports. So we could postpone it to the 153rd if you so wish, but that is also still accumulating the debt of these countries. So, Mr. Secretary General.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I think you are very clear in that explanation. I would just like to allay the concerns of Guyana and Suriname. Madam President, when you presented the report, you said that the IPU should continue to engage with these countries and provide the support that they require to improve on their capacities. What you are doing now is suspending their membership rights, but you're not suspending the IPU's assistance to these parliaments as may be required to make them stronger parliaments. So that is not a requirement of the rules of the IPU that you refrain from supporting these parliaments. They will continue to enjoy the benefits, including from the Parliamentary Solidarity Fund. What we are saying is that according to the rules today, they are unable to exercise their membership rights, including voting in the decision-making processes of the IPU. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Give us an opportunity to speak with them one more time, and let us take this decision at 1:53.
Yeah.
Colleagues, can I read for you the paragraph that I read before I brought this issue that we have to vote? I read and I repeat, and I hope my colleagues, you can also pay attention to that. I said, the executive committee also took note of the, or rather instructed that concrete measures of support to parliaments of small island developing states, SIDS, include financial support for participation via Parliamentary Solidarity Fund, which should not include funding their contributions, encouraging participation in IPU bodies, encouraging submission of agenda items, as well as holding informal meetings at assemblies. So what we are talking about here is one of the reasons is that we don't want them to keep accumulating, but they can always come to assemblies. So I don't know how we would want to help them when their debt is accumulating. At the same time, we have pledged as IPU to assist them. And this is the paragraph that is very important for these countries to show that IPU stands in solidarity with them. So
Madam,
I don't know if you still want to object to that.
Yes, I'm objecting. Suriname is objecting. Madam President.
Okay, we have to take a decision, colleagues. I'm sorry. We are running out of time. So
Do I have the right to speak or not?
you have already been given the chance to speak.
No.
You have already spoken.
You're just cutting my off.
No. You spoke first before Speaker Nadir, didn't you?
No. You don't,
Suriname,
you don't want to listen. You don't want to listen to our voices.
I'm sorry, Suriname. I'm sorry.
You don't want to listen to our voices.
I'm sorry.
You can be sorry, but you have to listen to our voices.
I listened to you, please.
Yeah.
I listened to you.
But maybe
Please
you
follow
don't
the
understand.
rules of IPU.
No.
Please follow the rules.
I follow the rule. I am a full member. I pay my contribution, so I have the right to speak.
Colleagues, we have to take a decision. What do we say in respect of this proposal, in respect of this recommendation? Okay, who are in favor of suspension? Okay, who objects to the suspension? Those who are in favor have won. Thank you so much. It is so decided. Colleagues, I'm going to give the Secretary General a chance to give us a procedural announcement. Mr. Secretary General, for the announcement, please.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Very quickly, this regards the quorum for the deliberations of the Governing Council. And this quorum is governed by the provisions of Rule 33.2 of the Governing Council rules. And it states that for each session, the quorum shall be established on the basis of the number of council members effectively participating in the first meeting. The quorum shall be announced by the Secretary General at that time. And that is what I'm doing now, Madam President. We, at the beginning of this sitting of the Governing Council, we were able to ascertain that 142 council members were present in the room. So the quorum has been established at 72 members of the Governing Council. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, we are now concluding our first sitting, and I would like to thank all of you for the contributions that you have made to different topics that were put forward in the agenda. I look forward to seeing you again on Sunday, 19th April at 9 a.m. when we start with the election of the new IPU Secretary General. Therefore, I count on you to be on time, because today we started a little late, so that we finish our business as foreseen. That said, colleagues, because of what has just happened here, I'm going to ask the Secretary General, and probably avail myself, much as I had an opportunity to meet the GRULAC. The Secretary General should explain more to our colleague in Suriname what it means with this decision that has been taken here in the Council, so that he is comfortable that the decision made is actually the best for the seeds.
Suriname doesn't need any explanation. Suriname needs action. Thank you.
Excuse me?
Suriname needs action, not explanation.
Well, the action is to tell these countries to pay, so that we don't have to go through this discussion. Colleagues, and that said, we are going to have a short break. Then when we resume, we have the assembly. The break will be for 7 minutes, so that you can, 10 minutes. 10 minutes, you can grab your coffee and then come back. And then we will go to the assembly. Thank you so much. The meeting stands adjourned until Sunday.
Thank you, Madam.
Hello, hello. Is now handed over to the president. Thank you so much.
Başkanlık devredilmiştir.
Dear colleagues, dear participants, once again, it is a great pleasure and honor to have you here and to take the chair as the president of the 152nd Assembly of IPU. If I may, I would like to make my opening remarks in Turkish.
Müsaade ederseniz açılış hitabımı Türk
Parlamentolar arası birliğin saygıdeğer
Distinguished Speaker of the Interparliamentary Union, Distinguished Speaker, Secretary General, Distinguished Heads of Delegations, Parliamentarians, and representatives of international organizations, distinguished guests. It's a pleasure for me to see you in Istanbul on the occasion of the 152nd Interparliamentary Union General Assembly. I'd like to greet you all on behalf of the Turkish Grand National Assembly. Holding these interparliamentarian contacts and dialogues in Istanbul bears special significance in terms of human consciousness. In this sense, I'm also honored to have assumed the chairmanship of the General Assembly. I'll try to preside over the General Assembly based on the principle of justice, allowing everyone opportunity to take the floor. My purpose is to ensure that negotiations advance in order and also to ensure that the will of every person who takes the floor is respected, and also to create a ground for fruitful discussions. The lecterns of parliaments are places which reflect the common knowledge of humanity. And these are so legitimate places. I hope that the decisions we will make and also the actions we will take will yield fruitful, auspicious results for our peoples and nations. And so I declare open the General Assembly of the 152nd General Assembly of the IPU. Distinguished parliamentarians and participants, our main theme is to nurture hope, ensure peace, and secure justice for future generations. I believe this main theme summarizes the pressing needs of our contemporary period. Humanity is going through a period where conflicts grow, inequalities become bigger, and also displacements and starvations and security erosions become entangled. Multipolar and multilateral political architecture had been considered as one of the main components of international balance for a long period of time. But recent developments show that the capacity of organizations to enforce decisions have been eroded, and also the credibility of the concepts and rules have been eroded. What we are going through cannot be explained by some technical deficiencies. Or what's happening right now cannot be brought down to some technical shortages or difficulties. What we are witnessing is something deeper and a broader global problem. The global system has maintained its pretension to establish norms but not the capacity to enforce them. Although there are some texts of principles and declarations, well, in the face of suffering and destruction affecting millions of people, these declarations and principles have no protective power anymore. The law has become flexible for strong players and has become rigid for weak players. It has become a tool of oppression. It has been transformed into a tool of pressure. The international system is now collapsing, and the grave situation in Gaza is only one example of this. A case where civilians are not protected, their right to life is not secured, and healthcare infrastructure is demolished, and also humanitarian assistance is hindered, and the necessities of basic life are eliminated. So, no effective and binding will has been displayed to prevent this, and this is a serious source of concern and also reality check for the credibility of the international system. We don't need to turn around the bush. An international structure that remains silent in the face of systematic attacks targeting humanity loses its credibility. And also the centers who claim to represent human consciousness are doing nothing more than watching the sufferings and destruction. The Palestinian case is not a tragedy, a drama that's affecting a certain territory only. It's become a reality check for the honesty of the global policy. Gaza, what's happening in Gaza shows that the selective implementation of humanitarian law turns out to be destructive. Gaza is a place which calls us to question the purpose of establishment of organizations and who are protected by these rules and organizations, and also the consistency, the ability to act consistently of humanity in the face of suffering. Silence in the face of destruction affecting innocent civilians cannot be disguised as impartiality. I'd like to underline this. The silence that's maintained in the face that comes at the expense of innocent civilians cannot be disguised as impartiality. Civilians' right to life cannot be subject of negotiations. The passage of humanitarian convoys cannot be presented like a grace subject to diplomatic calendars. And no discrimination can be made, no prioritization can be made among the right to life of innocent civilians. The most basic duty of the international consciousness is to call a violation, no matter who the perpetrator is, and to bring the criminals before justice. What's needed at this current point in history is not to produce words, to utter words, but to display the capacity to turn these words into actions. The international community has to abandon the habit of making declarations only and also its habit of temporizing when it comes to taking concrete actions. Of course, diplomacy requires a restrained attitude, and also kindness is an indispensable part of the international system. However, when kindness is used to mask oppression, then the diplomatic language loses its meaning and significance. So we shouldn't lose our capacity to call an oppressor in the face of oppression. There is also a distance between restraint in speech and also with being ineffective, just like there's a difference between silence and also being restrained. So parliamentarians need to play a significant role. Parliamentarians need to make frank speech, and we should not use kindness as a pretext to mask the reality. Everybody who assumes to represent their people while defending the interests of their community should also take into account the common dignity of humanity. Otherwise, the concept of national interest turns into a narrow political tool that excludes global criteria. In a world characterized by weaponization, injustice, no one can have global permanent security. Security cannot be established on the insecurity for other people. And also economic imbalances cannot be considered in isolation with the agenda of peace. As the disparities of income grow across the world, then the young generations lose their confidence in the future. The issue of development cannot be brought down to some criteria of growth. What's important is to ensure the equitable distribution of prosperity and also to protect labor, respect labor. The pressing need is actually to allow that all segments of societies are protected when it comes to education and healthcare services. And also, climate crisis has become one of the pressing issues of the international agenda. Drought, water stress, food insecurity, the frequency and periodicity of disasters, and also environmental fragilities, vulnerabilities are broadly affecting people across the world. Distinguished parliamentarians, most of the societies who assume a heavy burden are those who haven't actually received an equitable burden. So we need a more equitable sense of distribution of responsibility. We are not in favor of a language that deepens discriminations. We need to put forward equity, human dignity. an approach that minimizes crisis of representations. And also we need to try to make multilateral organizations more representative. That will be our guiding principle. And the same principle also applies to interparliamentarian contacts. Different opinions need to be able to discuss in different fora, and also striking divergence of opinions need to be able to be discussed in order to try to yield something auspicious, fruitful for all humanity. If we adopt this approach, then it will be possible for us to nurture hope. No doubt, if we act in this manner, and we will be able to maintain this principled approach based on political resolution. When we adopt such an approach based on morality, then we would be making a significant contribution to broadening justice and equity across the world. Peace cannot be considered only as an abstract expectation. We should reach a point where legal system is not selectively employed, and also representative channels remain open and human dignity is maintained. A case where the strong players dictate their will cannot satisfy human consciousness. As the gap between the might and equity broadens, then the credibility of the international system is called into question. Humanity has occasionally made soul searching, and what's happening right now shows deep crises with significant ruptures and fractures, and it calls us to make a soul searching as well. This being the case, the international system and all organizations of the international system have to make an introspective soul searching. The main question facing us is the credibility of organizations, concepts, and rules. Shall we be able to make all this credible again? If not, the distance between principles and international organizations will further widen, and the international system will not be able to represent the international consciousness. So I'll try to assume this chairmanship duty based on this sense of responsibility. And I consider contribution of all delegations as valuable. All opinions need to be listened attentively, and all opinions need to be evaluated in a civilized manner. I hope that the 152nd Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union will yield auspicious, fruitful results for our nations and communities. I hope that the discussions and deliberations we make here will bring contributions to the bright future of humanity. And taking this opportunity, I'd like to thank you again for attending this important gathering in Istanbul. I wish you an auspicious General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I now invite the President of the Interparliamentary Union, Dr. Tullia Aksen, to share her views on the overall theme of our general debate at the Istanbul Assembly: nurturing hope, securing peace, and ensuring justice for future generations. Please, Mr. Aksen, you have the floor.
President of the 152nd Assembly, Mr. Secretary General, Honorable Speakers, Deputy Speakers, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, we are gathered here in Istanbul at the crossroads of continents and civilizations to debate nurturing hope, securing peace, and ensuring justice for future generations at a time when, you may argue, the present is more in jeopardy than the future. When global conflicts overshadow hope, peace has been disfigured into a battle for dominance, and justice is shaped not by universal standards, but by whichever rights powerful actors choose to recognize. I mentioned in my remarks yesterday that the world is in turmoil. I do not want to deliver a message of despair today, but I do want to recognize the moment in which we are living in. The first thing we owe to future generations is an honest appraisal of the present, of the world they are set to inherit if business as usual continues. That is the world which is becoming less peaceful, less just, and less hopeful. A world that is irreparably damaged and more dangerous because we have not managed to avert the climate emergency. A world where unregulated technologies may harm rather than help. A world where millions of people are still hungry, displaced, traumatized, uneducated, and less prosperous, and where women are less equal than men. A world which is less democratic and is less free, but that is the world that the children of your children, brothers, sisters, relatives, friends, and colleagues will inherit if we don't take urgent action today. There is, however, reason for hope. I would like to share 3 optimistic reflections with you today. Firstly, 80 years ago, an international system was established to protect future generations from the evils of civil war, injustice, and inequality, and help them live in peace, free from fear and want. Dear friends, dear colleagues, let me remind you who are seated here today, we are those future generations. Most of us here were not born when the United Nations was founded. It was for us, for our dignity and our prosperity, that an international order grounded in universal rights was established. Yes, that system is flawed. We have acknowledged it ourselves. The high-level declaration from the 6th Conference of Speakers of Parliament reminds us that the United Nations needs reform. But that does not take away from something all of us in this room, as members of IPU, share a commitment to multilateralism and an agreement on the fundamental rights and freedoms of all people as a cornerstone of peace and justice in our world. Today, we see many violations of these rights and freedoms, a growing culture of impunity. No doubt, many of you will voice these in our general debate. But I ask you also to remember that what an achievement it was and continues to be that the nations of the world shared a common understanding that all people are equal in rights and in dignity, what these rights entail, and that there is an intrinsic link between the rights which all of us in this room have committed to uphold, and lasting freedom, justice, and peace. Dear colleagues, dear friends, let us all recall these shared principles and other shared agendas, such as the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not about doing better. It is about honoring and upholding what past generations, what our constitutions, and what our own national laws have already committed to. Secondly, the immense potential of parliamentary action for the sake of our future generations. I invite you to reflect on what a privilege it is to be a legislator. We create the laws that make our societies, our regions, and our world more just. We ratify international treaties. We oversee the work of the executive and approve budgets to make sure that the promises made to the people are delivered upon. And most importantly, we represent the people. We carry their needs, hopes, and aspirations from the kitchen table or village square and into the debate chambers. Dialogue is an essential tool for resolving conflict, and parliamentary diplomacy is gaining greater traction in conflict resolution. We, parliamentarians, have the benefits of agility. We are in contact with our ministers, just as we are speaking to our constituents. We encounter each other in Parliament, and we meet members of Parliament from around the world here at IPU. Our mandate is defined by dialogue and, equally important, action. The way we exercise our parliamentary debate, dear colleagues, dear friends, how we uphold the rule of law, the way we interact with our constituents and our peers, all of these will impact how future generations we will live and the confidence they have in their public institutions. Our institutions are not perfect. Our colleagues are not perfect. We ourselves are not perfect, but we have the opportunity every day to improve. This brings me to my third point, solidarity. The first sentence of Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is well known. It tells us that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. But there is a second sentence of Article 1, much less known, which says that they are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. 80 years ago, we committed ourselves not just to uphold norms and standards, but also to uphold fraternity and serenity. I view this less as a legal commitment and more as an expression of humanity and of values that long predate our international system. Having this in Article 1 underlines all articles of the Declaration. Our multilateral system is grounded in an understanding of our interconnectedness. Without solidarity, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, our commitments towards one another, towards the future, are a mechanical obligation. But solidarity goes further. It goes to the fabric of our societies, what makes us human. Colleagues, this assembly, taking place in the middle of a global conflict, is bringing together a record number of office holders. Over 113 speakers and deputy speakers have traveled, including from regions of conflict, to engage in dialogue for peace today and tomorrow. And many who could not travel were restricted by circumstances rather than choice. Dear friends, creating a more optimistic, peaceful, and just future for our children starts with making good decisions today. And we, national lawmakers and community leaders, have a role to play here. This incredible turnout in Istanbul shows courage and solidarity and tells me clearly that we are motivated to work for a more peaceful, and just world. It is on us to ensure that decisions taken today for current generations also work for the well-being of future generations. Dear colleagues, dear friends, there is a proverb I like very much, and I would like to conclude with this. A word of encouragement. If, like me, you feel that sometimes the weight of the problems facing us is bigger than any solution we could offer, then I ask you to remember, if you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. I will repeat, if you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. Now, that said, I would like, colleagues, to wish you fruitful deliberations, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Madam President. As you are all aware, it has become usual practice at the IPU to inform you our general debates by both a gender and a youth perspective. Now, I would like to start by inviting the President of the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians, Ms. Cynthia Lopez Castro of Mexico, to address this opening session. Please, Castro, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yes. Down, a little bit down. Down will be better. It's okay. A little bit down. It's okay. Thank you so much. It is my great honor to address you today as President of the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians. First of all, I want to thank you, the great speaker from Turkey, for this assembly, but not just the big effort that they put here, the passion that you put here in this assembly, speaker, because you have been all the time, every day, receiving delegations, receiving speakers, talking with us, and that is what we thank you so much. Thank you to make Turkey an assembly from the heart. Thank you for make Turkey an assembly to make peace. And thank you to make Turkey an assembly for women and youth. So thank you so much, dear speaker. Also, I want to congratulate President Tulia Axon for her extraordinary work as President of Interparliamentarian Union, and of course, that I will say in all the forums and all the time. We have the great Secretary General Martin Chungong, and we don't want you to go. We want you to stay here with us, but I congratulate all your work forever for women as a gender champion. And I also congratulate Ms. Noor, President of Young Parliamentarians, that has doing a great work. Let me make a reflection. We meet at turbulent times with escalating wars, with deepening inequalities and human suffering, and growing distrust in democracy. We are left with a sense of constantly instability and hopelessness. Conflict is no longer seen as failure. It is becoming mainstream. Violence is normalized nowadays in a lot of countries, in the world, in social media. We are all the time surrounded by violence. The language of force is gaining ground over the language of reason. At such moment, we must resist fear and despair, but above all, we must resist the idea that war is inevitable, that justice is manageable, or that equality can be postponed. Our task is to move from isolation to common purpose, from fear to commitment, from division to dialogue, because hope will be not rebuilt by weapons. Peace has to be built by all of us in our countries, in our parliaments, in our communities. And it begins with truth. There is no hope for future generations without equality. Gender equality has long been silent architecture of our societies. It has shaped power, health, wealth, labor representation. It has decided whose voice counts, whose work is unseen,
Yes.
whose future is negotiable. And every crisis, it is women and girls who carry the heaviest burden. We need to keep working from gender equality. Now, only 27.5 are women in parliament. Now we have 2 parliaments in the world with no women. We are going back, and we cannot go back. We only have 22% of women in cabinet, and we have 28 women that are prime minister or president. We need to go for more. We need to do more. We need to have more women as member of parliament, more women in the Senate, more women as speakers, more women leading or head of delegations. I'm so happy that now we will have the first women Secretary General in the history of IPU. Imagine more than 100 years with no women as a secretary, so I feel so happy that in Tanzania, in October, Tanzania, we have a president, a female president that will be receiving us, President Samia. Also, we have the President Tulia Axon that will be there receiving us in her country. And we will have the first Secretary General of the IPU. So let's keep working for gender equality. Let's go to our parliament and really commit what can we do to keep forward in gender equality. Let me tell you that in 2021, there were all parliaments of the world have at least 1 woman in their parliament. 2021, 5 years ago. And now we have 2 parliaments with no women. We cannot go back. I just want to give this message to you, that you as speakers keep promoting gender equality, keep promoting women, keep promoting parity. We need it. Now we just have 8 countries in the world with parity in chambers. So I hope next assembly, after some countries that will have election, we have more parliaments with gender equality. So as a conclusion, I want to say that it's time for women. And it's time for women in Turkey, it's time for women in my country, Mexico. It's time for women in Europe, in America, in the Arab countries, in Africa, in Asia. It's time for women in the world. But to make time for women, we need all of us that we are parliamentarians to keep promoting day by day in our parliament. Trust women and trust women in peace, because when we have women, we have peace. And I just want to conclude telling about the recommended 3 actions about the Women Speakers Conference that was in Geneva the last month. First, to ensure that women, peace and security agenda is a priority, integral part of the feminist foreign policy that recognizes that essential role of women in peace building, conflict, and prevention. Second, to fully respect international humanitarian and human rights law, promote peaceful, negotiated settlements in place of a growing reliance of violence at war. And third, to address the gender-related consequences of violence and war in survivor-centered way to ensure inclusive peace processes are the only sustainable path to lasting peace. So, dear colleagues, let's keep promoting gender equality. Let's keep promoting women. Trust us. Trust us. We are here to build democracy, to build peace. And I said again, in Turkey and all parts of the world, it's time for women. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez Castro. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you so much.
Now I would like to invite the President of the Bureau of Young Parliamentarians, Ms. Noor Abu Ghosh of Jordan, to address this opening session. Ms. Abu Ghosh, the floor is yours. Thank you.
And your spiritual speech.
Thank you.
Madam President of the IPU, Mr. Secretary General, Madam President of the Bureau of Women MPs, respected MPs, dear guests, I want to begin with a simple truth. Every decision made in a parliament today will be felt tomorrow by our children, by their children, by generations we will never meet. will not remember our words. They will remember the action we will take. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Abu Ghosh. I am now very pleased to introduce our special guest. It is a distinct honor to welcome this morning Mr. Berham Salih and Ms. Georgina Magesa to address this opening session. As you know, as of January of this year, Mr. Berham Salih is the new United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Prior to that, Mr. Salih had a distinguished political career of over 3 decades in the home country of Iraq, serving twice as Prime Minister of the Kurdish regional government, as Deputy Prime Minister of Iraq, and as the Minister of Planning. Most recently, he served as President of Iraq from 2018 to 2022. Ms. Georgina Magesa is an 11-year-old climate activist and young author from Tanzania. She is founder of the Georgina Foundation and a youth advocate with UNICEF. She represents the voices of the Tanzanian children and youth, promoting children's rights, education, and environmental protection. She especially uses her voices to advocate for urgent action to tackle the climate crisis. In view of the theme of the general debate, we are very pleased to have Mr. Salih and Ms. Magesa with us today to share an intergenerational exchange about what nurturing hope, securing peace, and ensuring justice for future generations means to them. The IPU Director of Communications, Thomas Fitzsimmons, will moderate this special opening segments. Mr. Fitzsimmons, you have the floor. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this segment to open the general debate with the theme Nurturing Hope, Securing Peace and Ensuring Justice for Future Generations. It's hard to feel hope at the moment. The world is facing so many overlapping crises, old and new wars, the climate emergency, rising prices, and growing political and geopolitical tensions that are making life harder for millions of people, especially young and future generations. And we saw recently with demonstrations around the world by so-called Gen Z who are frustrated by the lack of opportunities that they have. However, the IPU has always believed in the power of bringing people together for dialogue. If different generations and stakeholders can work in partnership, then perhaps with parliaments we can also begin to find mutual gain. So that's why we're trying something a little bit different today to set the scene for the debate, an intergenerational debate. To help us, I'm delighted to welcome His Excellency Berham Salih, UN High Commissioner for Refugees. High Commissioner, what are your first impressions of an IPU Assembly?
To start with, I must say thank you to IPU for the kind invitation, and also thank to our host in Turkey, Speaker, and other colleagues who have been hosting us in this amazing event. IPU, from what I know, has been quite an important institution together parliamentarians from across the world to debate, discuss, share experiences, and also affirm our common fundamental interests in promoting peace and promoting human dignity, which I think is a shared human value for all of us. I visited today as High Commissioner, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. It's a great honor to be assuming this position, having been a refugee myself, coming from a region that displacement for generations. To be trusted with this mission is quite an honor, but I also recognize it to be a awesome responsibility. I speak to you today as a country that has been hosting refugees in ways that is quite exemplary. Even today, as we speak, nearly 2.3 million Syrian refugees are in Turkey. That is almost 15 years on from the start of the conflict in Syria. If anything, this tells you how important and how relevant the mission, the humanitarian, the moral, and the legal mission of helping people who have been forcibly displaced from their homes.
The translator.
Translation is not work there.
We'll fix it.
Hopefully that will be fixed. It's a technical glitch. This is an important moment in history
Is translation.
because while conflicts are raging in many parts of the world and displacement has reached record levels, nearly 170 million people are forcibly displaced from their homes. An unprecedented record, and this is not including the people who have been displaced as a result of the recent conflicts in the Middle East. I just come from Lebanon and spent 2 days there watching this war unfolding and watching this humanitarian crisis unfold. If anything, despite the challenge, I would say this mandate of refugee convention that was delivered to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees to provide protection to people fleeing conflict, fleeing persecution, people forcibly displaced from their homes because of a variety of factors, conflict, persecution, climate shocks that are inflicted on their daily lives, is as relevant as ever. And speaking to IPU parliamentarians from across the world, I want to say this values of humanity, this values of reaching out with assistance, with protection of people who need it, remains as relevant as ever. You are representing your national parliaments, parties, and nations, hoping that you will translate these principles, these values, into legislations that is translated into budgets that encourage protection, inclusion of refugees, helping them to develop their agencies and move forward. Sitting with Georgina today, I consider it to be quite an honor, because I would say, having spoken to her, she was kind enough to offer me a beautiful gift today, the bookshop that she wrote. Looking at her, listening to her, their aspirations of her generation is something that I would say we need to learn from to reach out to our common humanity and the responsibility, the shared responsibility that we have in generations, and making sure that we actually help her and help her generation to live in a more peaceful world, in a more prosperous world, in a world that is more resilient, that is more sustainable, and not just more conflict, more displacement, more challenges.
Thank you, High Commissioner. We'll get into that as we break things down. Georgina, let's turn to you. Tell me what gives you hope. Well, first, what is your first impression of Istanbul and the craziness that is an IPU assembly?
Thank you very much. I'd also love to say thank you to the IPU for inviting me. This is not my first time associating with the IPU. It's my second one. I was invited to the 6th World Conference of Speakers last year in Geneva. But this is my first time being in an assembly. My first impression was something that doesn't actually get me a lot. Meeting people who love children and who want to fight for children's rights, making sure they stay in a safe area, is something really amazing because we children are the heart of the world. And if we're not protected, who will protect us? And if we're not protected, how are we able to protect our planet? My first impression for Istanbul, it's beautiful, it's amazing. I love the structure of the buildings. But my favorite part was the greenery. It's green. I can see the mountains and the trees from the plane.
She is really very clever.
The atmosphere. And I love the way the IPU is associating with children, telling us that we're not alone. We're on this journey together, making sure that we nurture hope for every one of you, secure peace for every one of you, and make sure we get justice.
Perfect. Georgina, thank you very much. And lots of cats.
Yeah, lots of cats.
Catstanbul. So today, a question to both of you. We bring together two generations who are helping shape the future. High Commissioner, forgive me, but I think you're what the media call the boomer generation, the generation born up to 1964. And Georgina, do you know what we call your generation?
Gen Alphas.
Alpha. Your generation Alpha. So boomer, Alpha, X. What does a genuine intergenerational partnership look like? High Commissioner, what do you expect from young people like Georgina? And Georgina, what do you expect from more seasoned people like us? High Commissioner, you first.
I'm a parent. I have to admit I'm also a granddad. I was in denial about having grandchildren and becoming a granddad. Every parent wants the kids to have a good education, to inherit a safe, secure, peaceful environment in which they can be able to contribute. I hear from my kids, and I hear from kids across the world, certainly in refugee camps that I have visited, a desire to really have a normal life, to have access to education, to have access to basic services, and to live with dignity, to be educated, to have an opportunity to have access to jobs and to contribute. This is really a fundamental requirement that every generations come together and seek. In today's world, we owe it to our children and the children of our children, to the Georginas, to really listen. I hope that they will be as vocal as Georgina, focusing on the crucial issues. And by the way, I have visited some of these camps in Africa. I've visited Ukraine. I've visited Turkey, some of the community of refugees, in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Chad, in Kenya, in those places. Really, all are the same. The parents want the best for the kids. The kids want to have access to good education, want to have access to sports, want to have access to a peaceful, secure environment. And increasingly, the issue of environment, the planet we live in, that it is clean, that water is available, that quality of air is better and healthy, are things that they expect. And we, in our generation, wherever our generations are, in positions of authority, really need to act on those, because we are custodians of this responsibility today of this planet. We have to give them a better place, hopefully.
A better place. Georgina, what do you expect from older generations?
Your Excellency, Honorable
Dr. Tulia Axen, President of the IPU, Your Excellency, Secretary General, Mr. Martin Chungong, distinguished speakers of Parliament, honorable delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Actually, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Georgina Magessa, and I am honored to be part of the 152nd General Debates today on behalf of millions of children around the world. And this is an opportunity I shall never take for granted. To start off, what gives me hope is something very simple: children. Even in places where life is most difficult, children still smile, children still learn, and we children, we still believe in a better planet. And that hope is very powerful. But hope alone is not enough. If we do not act now, the future for children could become even more difficult than it is right now. We may grow up in a place with fewer trees, less clean water, that turns into more disasters and more inequalities. And the children who suffer the most will be the ones who are already vulnerable. That is why we must act together. And that is why nurturing hope, securing peace, and ensuring justice for future generations is not just a theme, but it's a responsibility we must act on now. If climate change does not stop at borders, so solutions should not stop either. Leaders and countries must work together closely with love and humility, with urgency and responsibility. We must invest in education so every child understands and can take part in protecting our planet. We must include all children, so especially children with disabilities, so no one, when I say no one, I mean absolutely no one, is left behind. And we must take real action, not just make promises. Through my work at the Georgina Foundation, we read books, we plant trees, and we learn together with laughter, because small actions, when multiplied, can change the world. I believe we still have time, but we must choose to act with courage, with unity, and with care. Because the future is not something far away. The future is near. The future is now. And the future is us. Thank you.
Georgina, a future career in politics? Do you want to become a politician?
No.
I think you would do well. Last question before we wrap up. High Commissioner, you have hundreds of parliamentarians in front of you representing some 150 countries. What one action should they take home? They love to talk, dialogue is very important, but what one action is critical?
As I said, there are nearly 120 million people forcibly displaced from their homes. And many, many millions of children who are growing in these unfortunate situations. These are our responsibility as humans, as a global community. We have a moral and a human obligation to be there to help them with protection, with humanitarian assistance, but also we need to be there to help them with pathways to solutions. As UNHCR, we have launched an important and an ambitious goal to reduce long-term displacement by 50% within 10 years. This is a very ambitious target, and I know it's beyond the means of UNHCR and its resources. It requires a whole society approach, a whole humanity approach. All our countries, all our nations have to come together in order to enable people moving out from a state of dependency, from victimhood to one of agency and dignity. Therefore, I am appealing to you as representatives of your national parliaments to really reflect on the imperative of the 1951 Convention, the Refugee Convention, the importance of providing protection, fleeing persecution, fleeing conflict. They are in need, they need help. But helping is not just humanitarian assistance. Help is also fundamentally with solutions. Number one has to be with peace. This situation where we see around the world, conflict after conflict, are causing untold damage and destruction and displacement. We as nations of the world, we as actors on this planet really need to focus on bringing about peace, because that is the fundamental solution. In the meantime, we also need to be there for people who are in need. It's a moral, humanitarian responsibility arising from our shared humanity, but I also say it is a national security interest for all the nations around the world. Keeping these large numbers of people in these unfortunate situations of deprivation, of dependency, makes it a problem rather than an opportunity for solution. Our appeal, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, is to really work together to ensuring that displacement is not looked upon as a mere burden and as a problem to be managed, but let's work together as ways to solve it. This is the basic requirement, what we are needed to do at this moment of history. As this convention has delivered for humanity over the past 75 years, as we look to the future, we really need to move forward with that focus on mind. Addressing the fundamental causes of displacement, helping with solutions, providing agency for people based on promoting their dignity and protecting their basic human rights.
Thank you, High Commissioner. Reinvigorate that spirit of 1951 with the Refugees Convention. Georgina, last question. I'm looking at the book that you wrote, and I'm thinking of our next assembly, the 153rd IPU Assembly, which will take place in Tanzania, in Arusha, close to Mount Kilimanjaro. I read in your bio that you have climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, aged 9. Tell us more about that experience as we close.
Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro was such an honorable opportunity. Mount Kilimanjaro is very beautiful. It's known as the second largest mountain in the whole entire world. But its beauty is about to last. Why? UNESCO says by 2030, all of Mount Kilimanjaro's snow and ice will melt because of global warming and climate change. This is an issue that is to be dealt with the whole world, not only us Africans or Tanzanians, because Mount Kilimanjaro is the beauty of the whole entire world. It doesn't belong to a specific society, but it belongs to the whole entire world. But despite all of this, something incredible still happens. Mount Kilimanjaro is still smiling, still warm, and welcoming every single parliamentarian to Arusha this year. And we might get the opportunity to climb Mount Kilimanjaro together. And don't worry, I'll be your tour guide.
Thank you, Georgina.
With the help of Madam Tulia Axon, if she's okay with it. Oh wow, she agreed. And Madam Tulia Axon, I was honored to create this book after I came back down. I'm very sorry we didn't have time to print enough books. But Madam President, with all due respect, is it okay if I may come and hand the book to you?
Let's do that. Thank you very much. Thank you, High Commissioner. Thank you, Georgina, for setting the scene and giving us some hope for the 152nd IPU Assembly.
Thank you. Isn't she a jewel? She is a jewel.
Okay, you can have a picture together.
Let's have a picture together, please.
In the middle, and then I'll press myself.
Okay.
Before I finish, there was something I really wanted to add on. Yeah.
Thank you. Excellency, thank you so much.
Well done.
Please.
Speaker.
She is. Please. Okay. Next year in Tanzania. Yeah. I thank you. I really thank you. Very kind, sir. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, maybe.
Thank you. Inshallah.
Excuse me.
Shall we?
Take this off.
I would like to thank to our special guests for such a lively exchange. We can now proceed. As you all know, item 2 of the agenda is the consideration of requests from the inclusion of an emergency item in the agenda of this assembly. I would like to remind all delegations that we will consider item 2 of the agenda tomorrow afternoon at 5 p.m. Please allow me now to make a few announcements in relation to the organization of our work. First of all, as it's customary, we shall start the list of speakers in the general debate with the segment for presiding officers of Parliament. We are greatly honored by the presence of so many delegations from around the world at this IPU assembly and a record number of speakers of parliaments. I wish to confirm that procedures have been respected and that the order of speakers, both presiding officers as well as first and second speakers, has been established by the traditional drawing of lots. The list of available to delegation in the hall. In the light of high attendance at the Assembly, a steering committee decided this morning to allocate 5 minutes as the total speaking time available to each parliamentary delegation, 6 for delegations led by speakers of parliaments. The young MPs who have registered for the general debate will have an additional 2 minutes. Permanent observers will have a maximum speaking time of 3 minutes. I would like to ask all delegations to take this into account when delivering their speeches. I also wish to inform you that as there are still delegations which have not yet registered to speak, we will be keeping the list of speakers open until tomorrow, Friday, 17th of April at noon time. May I ask the Assembly to approve this decision? Approved. Thank you. May I also take this opportunity to remind delegations that they are entitled to nominate one of their members of Vice President of this Assembly. Do we have some assignment? Okay. I invite all delegations who have not yet done so to communicate the name of their candidate to the IPU Secretariat. I will be very pleased over the coming days to share this presidency with some of these vice presidents during the general debate. Finally, honorable delegates, I wish to inform you that in order to facilitate the work of the Assembly, on either side of the stage, there is a user who will be pleased to transmit any messages you may have for myself or my secretariat. You have therefore before you the list of speakers who have registered so far for the general debate. Finally, I would like to request all delegates to strictly respect the speaking time allocated so that our delegates who have registered to speak may do so within the time available for the general debate. The first speaker in the general debate is Mr. Anglu Farrugia, Speaker of the House of the Representatives of Malta, who will be followed by the both Speakers of Parliament of Bosnia-Herzegovina, Denis Rizvic and the Kemal Adamovic. Mr. Farrugia, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished guests, honorable delegates. It is an honor for me, on behalf of the House of Representatives of Malta, to address this assembly in Istanbul under a theme that speaks directly to the conscience of our time: nurturing hope, securing peace, and ensuring justice for future generations. This is not merely a theme of reflection. It is a call for responsibility. For decades, the international community has spoken the language of peace, justice, and human dignity. Yet too often, those suffering on the ground still wait and are still waiting for the protection we promise, for the justice we proclaim, and for the peace we repeatedly endorse. And so our task today is clear: to move forward from words of the case into real action. Malta comes to this assembly as a small state, but with a strong sense of principle and responsibility. Our history, our geography have taught us that peace is never distant, instability is never abstract, and justice can never be selective. As a Mediterranean country, Chair, Malta believes firmly in multilateralism, in dialogue over violence, in international law, and the dignity of every human person. So we remain convinced that peace cannot rest on indifference, that security cannot be separated from justice, and that diplomacy must always remain anchored to conscience. And that is why Malta comes to support a rules-based international order, strong multilateral cooperation, and a just peace in conflict areas, including continued support, for example, for the two-state solution, for a permanent solution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and for peace founded on sovereignty, security, legality, and human dignity. And that is why when we talk about this, we talk about future generations. We must understand that peace is not in its fullest meaning if it is not peace. That is not the absence of war. Peace is the absence of justice. Peace is the protection of civilians. Peace is the strength of institutions. Peace is the confidence that law still matters. In my work, Chair, within the Interparliamentary Union, including those efforts connected with the promotion of respect of international humanitarian law, I am constantly upheld one essential principle: that is, law must not remain declaratory. It must be implemented. It must always be subject to checks and balances. However, the real value of international norms is measured not by how often they are quoted, but by how faithfully they are enforced, especially when circumstances become difficult. Oversight must always be present. Chair, yet we must also say with honesty, it is not enough. Much more needs to be done. The gap between commitment and implementation remains too wide. International humanitarian law is too often defended in principle. However, it is neglected in practice, or worse, ignored. Too many civilians continue to suffer because institutions speak with urgency only after the tragedy has already struck. So what must be done? First, parliamentarians and parliaments must exercise serious and continuous scrutiny in matters related to peace, conflict, security, and humanitarian responsibility. Second, international commitments must be translated more effectively into national legislation, public policy, and institutional practice. Third, we must invest more in prevention through dialogue, education, inclusion, parliamentary diplomacy, and early engagement, rather than waiting for the crisis to become a catastrophe. Fourth, justice must be understood broadly. Future generations will not inherit peace if they inherit themselves lawlessness, exclusion, poverty, environmental decline, and institutional mistrust. And fifth, we must act with consistency. We cannot defend international law selectively and expect future generations to believe in it universally. How it is to be done? By being courage, all of us in public life, by discipline in governance, by aligning policy with principle, by ensuring that resolution lead to implementation, by making accountability a habit and not an exception, and also by placing human person as the center of every decision we take. So, Chair, Malta will continue to do its part. We lead by example, as it always has. We will continue to support peace through dialogue. We will continue to defend the rule of law. We will continue to speak for multilateral cooperation. And we will continue to insist that the work of parliamentarians, the work of parliaments, does not end when declarations are adopted. It begins when those declarations are honored in practice. As the UNESCO Constitution wisely reminds us, and I quote, "Since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be construed." And I now have to quote, which is in my heart, in words that resonate deeply across the cultures and faith, the Quran. The Quran states, "Stay firm for justice." Stay firm for justice, Chair. And this is the duty before us. Let us, this assembly, show that parliamentarians and parliaments are still capable, not only of expressing the hopes of humanity, but of advancing them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Farrugia. Now I would like to invite Mr. Kemal Ademovic, Speaker of the House of Peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The floor is yours, please.
Distinguished Mr. President, distinguished Madam President of Interparliamentary Union, esteemed hosts of this magnificent gathering, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me at the outset to express my sincere gratitude to the hosts for the excellent organization of this assembly, which by its scale and significance reaffirms the strength of the Interparliamentary Union as a global platform for dialogue, cooperation, and shared responsibility for the future of our world. It is a great honor to address you today. I come from Bosnia-Herzegovina, a country that, from its own experience, understands how precious peace, justice, and international law are precious, but also they are fragile
if they can be not protected on a daily basis. Interparliamentary Union has demonstrated that in its history that parliaments are not merely places where laws are adopted, but also the voice of the conscience of the international community. Today, as we witness serious violations of international law and shifts in the global order, this role is more important than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, I come from a country where one people suffered genocide. I come from the city of Sarajevo, which endured a siege lasting 1,425 days, the longest siege of one capital city in modern history. During that period, more than 1,600 children were killed only in that city. These are not just numbers. They represent lost childhoods, interrupted dreams, and a lasting wound that obliges us never to remain silent in the face of injustice. That is why today I cannot but draw a parallel with the suffering of children in Gaza. No child, regardless of where they are born, should be a victim of war. It is our moral and political obligation to raise our voices and to act. We see this solution in a principle long recognized by the international community. Two states living side by side in peace, security, and mutual recognition. This is not merely a political formula, it's the minimum of justice and the minimum of hope. However, we are witnessing that international law is increasingly being violated, and the rules-based international order is being called into question. Precisely for this reason, the responsibility of us parliamentarians is not to remain silent observers. Our role is clear: to raise our voices in our parliaments, before our governments, and in front of the citizens we represent in support of restoring a rules-based international order, protecting human rights, rule of law, and preserving peace. Parliamentary democracy must be stronger, louder, and more determined. Our differences must not be our divisions. Our differences must be the point of our meeting. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Adamovich. Now I will invite Mr. Denis Zrzic, Speaker of the House of Representatives of Bosnia-Herzegovina. Please, the floor is yours, Mr. Zrzic.
Bununla bitiriyoruz değil mi? Bununla bitiriyoruz efendim. Before proceeding, I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat. Secretary Bodil to announce the quorum for the assembly. Hanımefendi konuşuyor. O yüzden bunu da şuraya yapabiliriz. Neden?
Apologies, but the interpreters cannot hear the speaker.
First sitting has no. We will continue with the
democracy, economic development, and protection of human rights and prosperous future. Ladies and gentlemen, I will not focus extensively on the current global situation.
Interpretation is impossible. We cannot hear the speaker.
Very known to all of us. Instead, I will use this opportunity to share the experience of my country, Bosnia and Herzegovina, an experience that may offer valuable lessons for addressing the crisis we face worldwide. The historical experience of Bosnia and Herzegovina demonstrates the possibility of developing diverse communities within a single civilization framework. In Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, within a radius of just 150 meters, mosques, synagogues, cathedrals, and Orthodox churches have stood side by side for over 5 centuries. Multi-ethnicity is the true code of the Bosnia and Herzegovina, and multiculturalism is deeply rooted in the pillars of the Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it's for this reason that Sarajevo is often referred as a Jerusalem of Europe. There are many examples of cooperation and solidarity throughout our long history, but allow me to highlight just one. During the Second World War, at a time when Europe was witnessing one of the darkest chapters of its history, the Sarajevo Haggadah, a richly illuminated manuscript brought to Sarajevo by Sephardic Jews in the 15th century, was saved thanks to the courage and solidarity of the Muslims, who risked their own lives to preserve this invaluable piece of cultural heritage. This story is not merely a historical episode. It is a lasting moral lesson of solidarity and mutual respect that should be a paradigm for relationship among the people, nations, and the state. And similar examples can be found in every period of crisis in history of Bosnia and Herzegovina. For this reason, we must learn to cooperate and to respect one another. For tolerance, cooperation, and solidarity are foundation upon which hope for future generations can be built. In a world marked by instability, geopolitical tensions, and deepening divisions, a stable and integrated Bosnia and Herzegovina, together with the entire Western Balkans and Southeast Europe, represents an important aspect of security for the whole of Europe. This is why we must accelerate this process. Bosnia and Herzegovina remains firmly committed to integration, dialogue, tolerance, and mutual understanding. Our duty as parliamentarians is to build bridges, not walls. And because of that, I am confident that together we can build a world in which these values are truly universal, a world where dialogue prevails over division, and where future generation will live not in fear of differences, but in their full recognition and respect. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Rizvich. Now I'm going to invite Mr. Marlin Mamataliev, Speaker of the Parliament of Kyrgyzstan. Mr. Mamataliev, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, President. Honorable Madam President, Honorable Secretary General, dear speakers, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the Speaker of the Grand National Assembly of Republic of Turkey, Mr. Numan Kurtulmuş, for the high-level organization of today's 152nd Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union and for warm hospitality.
Dear colleagues, Today, we are gathered at the meeting of the Interparliamentary Union, not only as representatives of states, but also individuals who bear common responsibility to future generations. Turning to the theme of today's event, creating hope means assuring people that their voices are heard, the justice can be done, and the peace is possible, not just an ideal, but as a reality. Building peace is not just about ending conflict, it is about building mutual respect and cooperation. Justice means providing each generation with a decent life, security, and development opportunities. Our task today is to put these principles into practice. Parliaments play a key role in building sustainable institutions, ensuring the rule of law, and protecting human rights. Through legislative initiatives, parliamentary oversight, and open dialogue with citizens, we can build trust and create the conditions for lasting peace. Dear participants, the theme of today's meeting is creating hope, building peace, and ensuring justice for future generations. We believe that the power of education is an invaluable tool in building peace, especially in the area of non-proliferation. In this regard, the International Day for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation Education, initiated by Kyrgyzstan and supported by the member states of the United Nations, as an important platform for implementing this idea. As part of our commitment to disarmament, Kyrgyzstan signed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons last year. We firmly believe that our world should flourish without nuclear weapons and that this invention of mankind should be used only for peaceful purposes. Distinguished heads of delegation, we support the creation of a just and inclusive global order in which every country, regardless of its size and economic potential, enjoys equal rights and opportunities. In this regard, the Kyrgyz Republic has submitted its candidacy for non-permanent membership of the United Nations Security Council for 2027-2028. It is worth noting that Kyrgyzstan candidacy is supported by the Central Asian states. Therefore, Kyrgyzstan will represent the Central Asian region in the Security Council and promote the regional agenda. When the Kyrgyz Republic is elected to a non-permanent membership of the UN Security Council in June of this year, it will make efforts to address the issues of sustainable development of the least developed and developing countries, as well as landlocked and developing states, and strengthen peace and security. Dear participants, Kyrgyzstan attaches great importance to climate, water, and sustainable development issues. We believe that environmental protection is a common responsibility of humanity because nature knows no national borders. The consequences of climate change are becoming more serious, and drought, melting glaciers, and changing ecosystems and biodiversity pose a threat to us. The Kyrgyz Republic consistently supports the recognition of the interconnection of natural systems, which are the two poles of a single system, from mountains to the ocean. I emphasize that rivers that feed marine and coastal ecosystems begin in the mountains. In this context, despite the fact that Kyrgyzstan is landlocked, last year we ratified the Convention on the Marine Biological Diversity. The Kyrgyz Republic is actively participating in international efforts to promote the sustainable development of mountain regions at the global level, and proactively working to promote the mountain agenda and draw attention of the international community to the problems of mountain ecosystems and mountain communities. At the initiative of the Kyrgyz Republic in December 2021, the plenary meeting of the 76th session of the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution 76/129 declaring 2022 the International Year of Sustainable Mountain Development. Further, in December 2022, the United Nations General Assembly approved Resolution 77/172, which declared 2023-2027 as the 5-year action for the development of mountain regions. I would like to inform you that Kyrgyzstan is taking preparation to host the second Bishkek Plus 25 Global Summit in October 21st, 23, 2027. It is a platform for discussing sustainable mountain development. We invite everyone to take part in this summit. Also, from August 31st to September 6th of this year, the Kyrgyz Republic will host the 6th World Nomad Games, a unique international event that unites the traditions, sports, and culture of the peoples of the world. We invite the participants of the Interparliamentary Union to participate in the celebration of unity and cultural diversity. Hosting the Games in Kyrgyzstan is another step towards strengthening mutual understanding, respect, and cooperation between countries, and also reminds us of the importance of preserving cultural heritage for future generations. Dear colleagues, parliamentarians are the voice of the people, but today we must also be the voice of the future. I believe that the interests of our future generations should be reflected in every law we adopt. We believe that creating hope, building peace, and ensuring justice for further generations is possible only when the benefits of development are accessible to all and the principles of justice, inclusion, and solidarity applied equally through international cooperation. Once again, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers of today's meeting and wish all the participants fruitful work. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mamatalia. Before we conclude the first session, I would like to give the floor to the IPU Secretariat to announce the quorum for the Assembly. Please, Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. In conformity with Rule 32 of the Assembly, for each Assembly, the quorum shall be established on the basis of the number of delegations effectively participating in the first plenary meeting. The quorum shall be announced by the Secretary General at that time. Number of delegations present in the room, 125. Quorum, 63. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. The first sitting has now concluded its work. We will continue with the list of the speakers in the general debate at 2 o'clock or 2:30? 2 p.m. At 2 p.m. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well. We go and return at 2, right? 2.